Okay, I'd like to bring the work session agenda of August 25th, and working off the revised agenda. But if anybody has any problems. Ready? Any questions on the minutes from August 11th? Okay. All right, so let's move into the items for discussion right now. State aid reductions, Lisa.
Yeah, just, if we could go back to the agenda for a second, tonight's agenda. There were a number of additions from the version that was sent home on Friday, so I just want to make sure everyone has the updated agenda for the 7 o'clock meeting. And we did have a couple of additions, some resignations, some leaves, appointing our music teacher. We had a music teacher who we hired earlier in the summer, and then she resigned to take a full position. So this is another person for Mrs. Silver's leave replacement. There are some temporary appointments. We're also recommending the appointment of the head custodian as well as the secretary for the who will be moving into the facilities department, replacing Jen McCune, will be transferring to PBS. And then there's a resolution about transportation agreement with Lynbrook. I think Mrs. Square wrote about that in the update. And our safety plan, I think that was already on the agenda. And then budget transfer. So there were some additions. If anybody has any questions about those before the 7 o'clock.
No, the only thing is with the Limerick, is that something new we just picked up with? I knew we had the Malvern.
Yes, it just took me just a little longer to finalize that.
That's great.
Yes, but those were the two I've been working on since last winter. And we kind of hit a little bit of a stall, with the COVID, and we managed to finalize what we got done.
That's absolutely great. So does that pretty well cover our private school transportation?
Well, yeah, we still have to contract out with a couple of different vendors, but the 3 routes that I had been looking at to work with the neighboring districts, we were able to go ahead with. It's 2 in Lynbrook and 1 in Malvern. So we hope that this is going to be beneficial. It's certainly going to be beneficial financially. We just hope it works out.
Yeah.
And maybe something in the future.
Jackie, I really appreciate that because I know you've been working hard on that. It really does help us a lot. Thank you.
As far as the district-wide school safety plan, did anybody else have trouble opening that link? Or was it just maybe my firewalls on my computer?
Not in no problem.
Yeah,
Not in no
problem.
problem.
Do you want to, you just email me, I can email you the actual plan.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, or Rich Hess. Well, he's a long time. Rich Hess coming back. Rich Hess started his teaching career.
Oh, yes, yeah,
I guess it was 30 years ago. And he tried it. Now he's with me.
yes, I just saw his substitute teacher,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Jackie's going to talk about state aid reductions. This is something that we've been anticipating, and Jackie will explain it, and then maybe we can give a little commentary and see, hopefully, that this may not actually come to fruition completely, but I'll let Jackie discuss this item.
So as we discussed several times, especially during budget, the new state budget allowed for periods of time in which the Division of Budget could go back, look at the expenditures that they were spending in the state, and also look at the revenue that was being received to see where it fell in line with the budget that they presented. So they prepared a budget based on anticipated expenditures and anticipated revenues. So they had several periods for them to look back and say, hey, are our revenues higher? Are revenues, or are they lower? Are our expenditures higher or lower? We all had a good feeling that the revenues would be decreased because people are out of work. So they're losing, a lot of revenue in that way. People are not shopping. And we really knew the expenditures were going to increase because there are more expenses under a pandemic for the state of New York. So they had talked about 20% reduction in state aid. At that time, we had thought it would be 20% of the foundation aid, that it would not be 20% of expense-driven aid, just foundation aid. So last week, at the end of the week, they announced that they were going to hold the 20%. We had hoped it would be less. They said up to 20%, but they did in fact go with the 20%. Not only did they go with 20% for the 2021 school year, but they withheld 20% of a receivable owed from 1920. That is something we did not anticipate. So every year, school districts have a small amount of money that the state of New York owes from state aid. It's usually received in July and August. So they withheld 20% of that. They told us when it was due, they would withhold the 20%. And that was approximately $134,000 that we did not receive that we anticipated. The 20% going forward for the 2021 school year is not off a foundation aid like we had anticipated, but it's over total state aid, which means the state aid, including the expense review. That's a huge difference. That is I want to just make sure I give you the number right, because it's 1.4 million, almost 1.5 million dollars. If they do in fact withhold the whole 20%. Now,
Wow.
the state has not been clear. We've been trying to get answers. They don't know whether or not this 20% is permanent or if it's just temporary. I hope again this is temporary. I hope that it's just waiting for federal aid. That's been, what they've been saying all along. They've had 2 periods already where they could have cut the state aid and given us notice, and they haven't. But all along, the government has been pleading to get additional federal aid. So our hope is that this aid will be returned. But at this point, we've lost $1.6 million.
We're hoping this is a strategy to put some pressure on the federal government. I mean, now that districts have been informed what the actual loss is likely to be, maybe people will take notice. I really think we need to write to our legislators. We need to have our PTAs and our parents made aware of this when we go back to school, asking our super PTA to do letter writing campaign. I mean, sometimes we're never really sure whether these things work or are effective, but I think our legislators need to understand how this is impacting us, and not just the state legislators, but our, from the federal government as well, because they need to put pressure on the federal government to release aid for schools. They keep talking about it, but now, they've not reached any agreement. There's threats to veto the packages, and so if that does not come, it will become a reality. We're hoping it's a strategy to just open everyone's eyes and awareness.
Where does the 1.6 get distributed to, like, specifically? I'm sure it's not just one specific area, right? It probably
No,
goes to a
it's-
few different areas.
Actually, no. They just,
Really?
it's like you get taken cut in your salary. You just get that much less money, and we have to figure out how to how to make reductions in our budget to bridge that loss of revenue.
That I understand, but where, say it was received, where would it have gone?
It would be considered revenue, and we use it for the cost overall for our salary.
So you could decide where to put it on your own terms. All right, that's what I'm trying to
It's
find out. So,
factored into the development of the
Yeah.
budget as a revenue when we
Just
develop
one
the
source of
budget.
so you could put those funds in anywhere you see fit.
Right, so we have one pretty much bucket of money, one pot, one account, so to speak, for the general fund. And then we expense out of that for various expenses, so payroll expenses, and we choose how that's done. And that's all done and determined on the budget process. So now when we have a loss so significantly, if it turns out we did not get, if it turns out they're gonna keep it,
Yeah.
we would now have to decide where we would reduce our budget to accommodate that loss in revenue.
Where do you think you would reduce it? What would be the first line of attack, basically? What would you reduce first?
There's not a lot of places for us to cut.
Right.
And I think, when we were
All right,
building
1.6 lot of money.
when we were building the budget and looking at and concerned that the budget might fail because of the method of voting, turned out it did not. But we had looked at, Jackie had prepared and put aside money in our reserves that we would be able to apply reserves for any shortfall if the budget went down and possibly if we have a cut in state aid, but we
Right.
haven't gotten that far, but we do have
So what,
some money in
yes,
reserves.
so as, as we've discussed, last year, there was quite a bit of money that we did not spend when the school closed. And what we did is we earmarked that money, and we kept it, and we held it for just such an event. And that will carry us through most of the shortfall. It depends on what happens going forward. If they decide that this money will be like what happened back in 2009 and 2010, when we had the last financial crisis.
That's why I had excess.
Yes,
2010.
and that's when we accessed quite a few people, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, I got to live through that too as a business official. And what happened is the first year we survived, we got federal funding. The second year, the reduction became a reduction, and so going forward, we had to figure out how do we move forward with a budget that's that much less money.
Right.
And that's when, and I've been saying the 2021 school year, 21-22 school year is the school year where we're going to really start to have to look at where can we cut costs. And we really are very tight in the school district, really are.
And, aside from that, we're really facing increasing expenses due to reopening schools.
Right.
There are a number of, you'll hear about, when we talk about the facilities preparation expenses, things that we've expended on, and additional personnel that we're going to need to hire, additional personnel because of some accommodations that ADA accommodations that need to be made for certain employees, just purchasing additional equipment like the cameras and tripods, and our Chromebooks have not come in, may not be coming in until October, so now we need to purchase some additional Chromebooks so that students who are on remote learning, everybody will be equipped and have what they need for the hybrid as well as the remote learning. So we have a lot of additional expenses that we are being asked on a regular basis by BOCES, who is acting as an agent to the state, to find out what we are, how much, what are we expending on, and how much have we expended so far, just relative to COVID. But, that's good to know how much we've spent, but we haven't received any relief in terms of aid for those expenses yet. And they're considerable.
As of right now, and I'm just sharing it for the first time, I was working on it this afternoon, Superintendent and I haven't had time to discuss it. But we spent close to $80,000 on supplies, meaning cleaning supplies, barriers, desk shields,
Hand
foggers,
sanitizer.
yeah.
Gloves,
Gloves, masks, the whole list that you saw the other day that we presented, so we spent close to $80,000 on that already. And we have spent so far close to $49,000 on additional cameras and tripods in order to enable us to do distance learning. So we're over $128,000 into this already. That does not include additional staffing that we're looking to put in place to keep up with the cleaning of the schools during the day. Typically, we have one custodian in each elementary building, 2 in the secondary building. That is not going to be enough when we have the students in the schools and we need the
It's gotta be
services
tough
of
to
the
find
desks.
people.
Well,
We are.
actually doing pretty well with that.
Really? Oh, that's great.
A lot different than I thought, but we
good.
advertised in
Texting,
a ton of
Texting,
papers.
at least
Oh, that's great.
25 people.
And we,
But we've also had some people resign or take leaves, and then those people will be replaced. We also will have a few teachers who will be on remote assignments due to their medical condition, and we will need to hire teacher aides to be in those classrooms to provide physical supervision for those children while the teachers teach remotely from home. And so in those cases, those parents will be notified that that will be a unique situation for those classrooms, but we need additional personnel. And there may be 3 teachers that we will have to cover in that capacity during those periods that, they teach 5 periods, so we would need those periods covered with a teacher aide. And that will have to be new hires as well.
So those teachers, those students, that class will be completely online. Well, in school, but really virtually.
Yes, it'll be almost the opposite. It
Right.
will be a hybrid. The kids will come in every 2 days in the high school, but the teacher will remain home. And the teacher will teach from her or his or her home. And then they'll need to, because we can't leave kids alone in the classroom, they will need another responsible adult in the classroom to provide supervision, make sure kids are on task, and really to monitor student behavior. Our administrators will be in those classrooms at the beginning of the year just to make sure that the students understand. Again, parents will be informed of this unique situation, but it is something that we're required to do based on the Americans with Disabilities Act and accommodations. I had 11 or 12 accommodations meetings with faculty members, and these individuals warranted that home assignment, as I indicated in the update, working closely with our attorney as well as our school doctor to make a determination as to what were the appropriate accommodations we were obligated to provide. So those are expenses as well.
And there's no relief with FEMA or anything like that, right?
Well,
Stay
we
if
will be-
necessary
yeah,
We
for-
are filing,
Okay.
and they are going to reimburse 75% of costs. I don't know if there's going to be a cap, so we'll see. We're hopeful. But it is, we are outlaying it first,
Sure.
and that's always a cash flow concern of mine.
So what a kickback this whole thing is when we were forced to spend down reserves. Everybody around the state was forced to spend down reserves. And now that you're looking for extra reserves, they're not gonna be there because of the percentage that we had to live by. So do we think there'll be any lobbying for that, Jackie? And what can we do as a board?
So on that note, that's my next comment. You're ahead of me, but I got notification today that they were going to, they passed legislation to loosen up the reserve, the use of reserves, but there's, of course, always a catch with anything that's done in the state of New York. And so they'll allow us to use reserves from other funds, reserves that are set aside, like we set aside for unemployment, or we set them aside for employee retirement systems, specific reasons. So they will allow us to use money from there to fund only specific costs to COVID, but we have to repay it over a 5-year term with interest.
You can
Wait,
borrow your own
repay
money.
yourself?
Repaying ourselves
We're paying ourselves.
over 5 years, and who knows, I mean, from the last time, it took several years to dig ourselves out of the loss of revenue. So I was like, well, they did this once before many years ago with the retirement systems, when they started to spike, they had given all school districts an option to go on an average and not pay the whole thing, and again, interest. So, you start seeing these interest costs being added to your own money, you can't help but wonder, like, really? You told us to spend down the reserves. Now you're letting us use the reserves under a pandemic, which is, a lot of us always like to say it was for emergency purposes. Many like to criticize it as rainy day funds, but honestly, that's what it was, so that the residents didn't have to feel these spikes in their taxes. And now we need it desperately. And now they're saying, oh, sure, you can have it, but pay yourself back in a 5-year term and pay interest on top of it. So it's, every time they give us something, they take a little bit more.
I don't understand the purpose of it. You're paying interest to yourself.
It's kind of like how they did it with the public. They can borrow from their 401ks.
Right,
Everyone
right.
can take 100,000. It's
They
free.
want-
Don't worry
They want
about
to
it.
discourage you from doing it.
Correct. You have to pay
They
it
don't want
back.
you to do it.
Instead,
But
they
you-
pay interest on
You have
that.
to pay interest, but that interest is going back into your own account. So it's really, you're not paying any, you have to pay it, but then you still have it.
But now
And that
that's-
doesn't apply to the 4% fund balance, whatever we have over the 4%.
And that's the money we have set, and that will help us through this year, is that 4%, that above the 4% that we put on the side from the money we saved last
When
year.
the auditors, we have the audit committee meeting in October, you'll get the audit report, the audit's completed now.
Yes,
And so they will provide their report to the board, and the auditors will come in and they'll explain, and they'll talk about all the different reserves and explain, some of them have kind of Some of them have very specific caps, like the fund balance is 4%, you're not supposed to have over 4%, you can get your hand slapped if you do, if you, we still haven't received our state audit back. We had a state audit last year, they were here for months and months and months, and I don't know what happened because we never got the report, we never had the closing
No, they
meeting.
had an exit
No
interview.
news is good news.
Invited to that, and it just never happened, I think the man was ill, I'm not sure.
We've called a
So
few
this was an
times.
external audit or an internal
It
audit?
was a New York State Controller's
Oh,
audit.
it's state control.
last year. So we do have an internal and an external auditor, so this summer is the external audit that we go through every single year when Jackie closes the books, and then the auditors come and report on that to you in October.
Okay.
And that report gets filed with New York State. So in there, they will point out certain concerns that they have. One of them usually is if a district's over the 4% fund balance, but as we discussed last year during budget season, and, I would bet every district had a fund balance above 4% because
Right.
people saved money from March until June, and that's where that money went, anticipating that there would be expenses, either cut in state aid, either a failed budget, or just additional expenses for COVID reopening. And other reserves are not as strict in terms of what the limit is, but they do have reasonable amounts. You shouldn't be over a reasonable amount.
Right.
And that's determined district by district. But the auditors can speak more about that in October.
Sure.
You could, if you really were that interested in looking at how we determine our fund balance, our balances and our reserves, the reserve plan is posted on the website.
Okay.
In the business office for the last couple of years, we posted as to what we consider reasonable, what our method is, and where we are as far as meeting that goal.
Jack, would there be the state aid reductions that we're receiving? Is that part of the county? Would you be able to get all the districts in the county just to see how we fared in comparison to other districts?
Well, every district got 20%,
Yeah,
Yeah, I know
across
that.
the board.
I understand that. But is that what that 20% actually meant
Sure,
to the districts?
sure. You mean like the percentage of their overall budget?
Yeah,
You're right.
My
because-
only reason for saying that, I think that it gives people an awareness of exactly how we're getting hit versus Lindbrook or versus Hewlett. So when everybody shops, we all know that, they all look and say, well, how come that district could do this, how come that? Well, if you see the reality of everything, you can see it in front of you. I think that's a good way to go about the cuts,
And
So love
state
seeing
aid
that.
is also a different amount, a different percentage of everybody's budget. So
No,
you have 20% of some of the wealthier districts.
it's very much smaller.
Yeah, and even if it's the dollar value, like their state aid may only make up 3% of their overall revenue source, where our state aid is significantly
Or
larger.
a district like Roosevelt or Hempstead, where when they get a 20% cut in state aid, it could devastate their entire budget.
Absolutely.
So much of their budget is made up of aid from the state as
Right.
opposed to the percentage of ours is more, because we're considered an average needs district as opposed to a low needs or a high needs district.
I just think that would be good for the future,
Sure.
Great, thank you.
So I really would suggest that we do try to contact our legislators, let them know what our concerns are and how difficult this is. When Judy Griffin had her forum, it was great because we all got to see what it was like from everyone's perspective, but I don't think there was a lot of conversation about the costs on that forum. At least I don't recall. It was
Yeah.
4 hours that there was a discussion about the costs, and that's problematic, is that people, I don't know if our legislators and even, at the federal level realize how this is impacting us. You hear it over in general on the news, but on a case-by-case basis and what the expenses are can really be devastating. It's really, and we have to spend the money. We were waiting and we were holding off and we really were, until it got to the point where we just couldn't hold off anymore. We had to start spending money to cover some of these costs.
Right.
If you remember in the spring, we were saying, well, we're gonna wait, we don't know if school's gonna open, if school stays closed, why would we go and have all this hand sanitizer when we may be closed anyway? We had to pull the plug because we had to be prepared. We had to get to the point where the supplies could be low. And now that we are purchasing N95 masks, there was a spike in other parts of the country. That's a national supply chain. And so our order of 295 masks was on back order. Now we just did receive it, or Jim purchased from another vendor. But, you can't wait, because if you do need those items, and we do now have to have them coming back to school, and we are going to open schools, so that's why it's problematic.
Okay, let's move on. Format for future board meetings.
So, Tina, she's not here, but she had brought to my attention from her district clerk listserv that districts, the executive order allowing school boards to close their meetings to the public and hold them via Zoom only is expiring on September 4th. And so some districts have already begun to have public meetings in public. Back in their auditorium, limiting and social distancing, taking temperatures, filling out health check forms. So I wanted to discuss with the board where you see us going moving forward. Again, our work sessions were always open to the public. We generally had only a few visitors come to those meetings, maybe 5 at most, and did not generally live stream them. We did receive a request yesterday for someone who was interested. And so we are live streaming this work session, but our next meeting is September 8th for a work session, and then the following, I guess it's the 15th for the public meeting. And this executive order has expired, so we will need to move into open public meetings. We can limit the number of people that come in the auditorium. Some people have given the PTA a certain number of seats. The union heads are invited to come, and then, whatever you can fit in the auditorium socially distanced appropriately, but with certain parameters where you do take people's temperature. Some districts are doing that, some districts are not. But everyone would need to fill out a health check form, because that is a practice now that we do that in our school with our employees. So we will have a remote way to do that on the door. Anyone who wants, it would be different. We would send out the QR code, and anyone who wanted to come to the board meeting would fill out the form in advance. So I wanted to throw that out there and see how you would like to proceed with the meeting starting on the 8th. And actually, we are also going to talk about the need for an additional, that's the next item, the need for an additional board meeting, because we do have a number of appointments, personnel appointments that will be pending. And, although we have in the past appointed people retroactively, we prefer not to. We don't, and we really aren't supposed to do that. We're supposed to appoint, and then the start date to be the day after the board meeting. And so we will have some part-time custodial workers, we have monitors, we'll have teacher aides. We have some leave replacements that came up at the last minute. Some teachers have decided to take leaves. So we will need to appoint these people before school starts. So we would like to propose that the night that we do the walkthrough, if we could possibly postpone the walkthrough until September 3rd, and that would give us a time this week, the rest of this week and next week, to interview, to check references, and to be ready to hire to fill these positions, and then hold a very quick special meeting just for personnel appointments on the same night that we do the walkthrough. And then have those, actually that meeting, if we had one on the 3rd, could be via Zoom. But after that, they would need to be in public. We can still live stream them, and we have been live streaming all our meetings all last year anyway. So that would just be continued practice. I imagine the board would want to continue to live stream.
I'm sorry, why couldn't we keep the walkthrough on the 1st and
Because we don't,
have
we
meetings?
figure we could use the 2 additional days to finish interviewing and calling references. The principals are interviewing furiously for some leaves, also for the additional teacher aides we need, the additional monitors we need. I know a lot of them are coming out of Jackie's office, so
So we would
With the
just,
staff coming back.
The staff is
September
coming
4th?
back on the second. And I think we
Second,
were just
third,
trying
fourth.
not to have the board have to come in 2 different nights, the first and the third. The third it would be the preferable day, gives us a couple more days of reference checks.
And it also gives us a few more days to get the buildings in shape. Jackie, during my superintendent's report, is going to give a report about where we're at with our buildings, the partitions, the barriers, the bigger barriers that are going between the pods of desks just came in today. So those need to be installed, and they're working furiously, maybe working over Labor Day weekend to install all of those barriers. So, I mean, we can still do it on the first, the walkthrough, and then the special meeting on the third, if you agree, or
So since the teachers are coming on the second, correct? On that, have you discussed this with the union reps as far as are they comfortable coming into the buildings if we didn't do that walkthrough, the walkthrough hasn't been done yet?
Yeah, the walkthrough is not a requirement to have staff return, and the walkthrough is actually not something we're doing because of COVID. Obviously, the focus would be COVID, but, yeah, no.
I mean, it's always done, we always do a walkthrough before
Right.
they come back because we want to make sure everything's the way it should be. So I just don't want, it's.
I'm actually not sure that's the reason for it. I think it's the board, it's not that we can't have people in the building until the board approves the
No, I
building.
wouldn't think, that's not what I meant. I meant is that you want to do the walkthroughs, that everything is the way it should be on opening day. That was my understanding when I got on the board, and that's how we've been doing it. So if we're saying that everybody is okay with this, and there's not more anxiousness in the staff that's returning a couple of days before the walkthrough, and that's why I'm relying on you, all right, and to tell us as the board, so that everybody is comfortable with this.
I think they are, because the ERTA has actually approached us and asked us to do their own walkthrough, which of course we said absolutely. The executive board has asked if they could go into buildings and walk around, so I will be doing that probably next week, Monday or Tuesday. Again, not everything is going to be in place, but they want to see what the classrooms look like. We have taken some pictures, but we will be doing a separate walkthrough this year because of COVID. So they want to be reassured that, and we never do that with the teachers because there's no need to do that. The buildings are always in beautiful shape when we come back. The custodians have worked so hard, and all of that work is still being done, but in addition to that, cleaning, that thorough cleaning, which I think we're very much on schedule in terms of the cleaning because we were closed in the spring and we started the cleaning early. It's more the COVID-ready work that's going to be done that the union is interested in looking at. So that's why they had asked if they could, and of course, we agreed.
Regarding the walkthrough, what percentage, I would say, out of 100 is completed in terms of finishing the building, getting it ready? What petitions are up? Where are we at, do you think? And just, you can
The
shoot from the hip.
barriers and the shields have just started to come in. So at this point, I'd say we're at 10%.
Okay.
We have moved desks around. A lot of the time has been spent moving furniture and excess
Into storage.
excess equipment out of the rooms to maximize the capacity and into a storage facility. So it's been quite the task. Setting up the desks for the capacities by rooms. Sometimes we've had to alter that many times, when capacities have changed, we've got new registrants. We've often had to change classrooms because one grade got extra children and they wouldn't fit the class that they're in. So we've done a lot of moving furniture.
Sure.
That's really what we've done this year, is we've moved furniture nonstop. We do have all the proper amount of desks in each classroom as per the enrollment counts as of last week. And so we started on Saturday, we started to add the actual barriers and the shields on students' desks. We started in rain. We have started probably 75% completed doing the employee barriers. So many desks, like the main office or the psychologist or the social worker, the
Security
guidance
desk.
counselors, security desk. Those where there's a very limited amount of space between the employee and the visitor. We have installed many of those shields already. We started that last weekend because they came in earlier, and now we're starting the students. So I would say we're probably 90% done with the employee shields and about 10% done with the student setups. Hopefully by next week, we could say 50, 60%. You know, many of the employees have been in the building. I mean, teachers are coming in, they're going in the classrooms,
The setting up,
they're setting
doing
up.
bulletin boards, they're actually, some of them, we've asked to kind of remove their own things or pack up their own things because we've needed to make room for more desks. And so teachers have been paid to come in and pack up their classrooms if they've had to do that. So that's been taking place as well.
So the first was the revised walkthrough date.
Yes.
And we can keep that if the
So,
board.
no, I'm just asking to
Right.
kind of wrap my head around. So the first, you would say approximately, you think you'd be at what percentage?
Minimum probably 50-60%.
So my point is getting to this, so that if you're at 50%, I mean, we can kind of figure, I think, as, we could see what it looks like, but I know you want to see it fully, right? That's your,
Well, they're trying to make us not come in twice.
Yeah.
You want
Yeah.
to come before the teachers. Can we come on the first, walk the buildings, and the
But
third
not
is Zoom?
necessarily,
I mean, I'm fine either way. Personally, both days work, I just check.
I'd be fine on the third, as long as what Lisa just reassured us and Jackie is that the teachers, okay, are not, uptight. They're gonna have their own walkthrough first, is what I heard, and that'll ease their mind. So if that happens, I have no problem going to the third at all, if everybody's okay with that.
That was me, because I didn't go on first.
Oh, so then it's even better. Okay, so I'll clear my schedule.
No, I
We'll go
can't.
to the third.
No.
Okay,
So
so we'll
this-
do
the third is
4
a Thursday,
o'clock for
right?
the walkthrough on the third, and then followed by we'll follow at about 6 o'clock with the 2 hours.
That's probably more than enough. I mean, it's not like we're going to be looking at the same thing over and over and over.
Okay, so
Typically, I will show you improvements to the buildings. Now I'm gonna be showing you dust shields and barriers. and
I mean, we did not do
furniture.
a lot of
We didn't
work
do any real improvements, it just wasn't the time.
or the other money.
Yeah, all the money,
Spend
well, the money
money.
that was set aside for that is what I was using.
So the walkthrough would be what time?
yes, that was.
4,
4?
and then followed by the board meeting. Jackie and I will talk with James and see about how long the walkthrough will take. Either the meeting, we could schedule for 5:30, and I'm telling you, it'd be like a 10-minute meeting just to approve the personnel appointments, so that we're following, the rules. Again, we have made emergency appointments retroactive. We prefer not to do that.
Because we really do believe there's gonna be quite a few, not just one or two. I gotta leave, this afternoon, so they're coming at the last minute.
We have another ERTA member who's asking for a full year medical leave. So we're hoping that position, we may not even invite. That was rather sudden and we just found out about that, so we may not have that position hired yet, so. But aside from that, we do have the teacher who we granted the leave at our last meeting. We will be ready with that appointment. We have another teacher who took an FMLA. Hopefully we'll be ready with that appointment, a teacher at Center, a teacher at Rain, and then a number of monitors and teacher aides, we hope.
All right, so let's move it, let's do it.
Now,
Thank
with
you.
the meetings, I think the quicker we get back to normal, get back to the,
Pete, I agree. I mean, I don't know how everybody else is, but we were the first, if you remember, when we said we wanted to meet up in a library,
yeah,
face to face, so we could see each other.
Yeah.
And we get a better vibe of what's going on. So I would love to go right back as soon as we can.
I mean, there's plenty of room in the auditorium.
It's not like we packed them out.
Yeah.
I have a question also about the board meetings that are live. Would we allot a specific amount of time for questions if there is an audience?
We do.
So that we don't have like a 4-hour meeting because parents are going insane? Do you allot a certain amount of time, and how much time is that?
We have a policy for that, and we have 2 public comment section. One is at the beginning of the meeting, and it's for any items on the agenda.
Right.
And then at the end of the meeting, we have another public comment section, and we limit those to 3 minutes. And Tina does bring a timer, and we do keep track. We
She has a
actually.
timer too?
We do, yeah.
You turn it
It's
over?
actually a
like-
little sand, one of
Yeah.
those sand egg
Sure.
timers, right?
Yeah.
An ancient concept. And we do ask people who want to speak to fill out a form, and we also can post a form, or we can have, we haven't really done that, but once the meetings are open to the public and if you are going to limit the number of people coming into the auditorium, I mean, at most, we have 20 people who come to our meetings.
You're probably gonna have double that now, just because of everything that's going on, and everybody's an expert, and everyone wants to tell their 2 cents to it, so you might have a little bit more traffic this time.
I'm hoping
Our
not.
meetings have been going well. Our meetings have been going real, well, what are you
Really
hearing that they're not?
The meetings have been going.
Anyway,
Well, we
it is
kept that
what
open.
it is. We welcome,
That's what you're saying.
I told parents last night, bring the questions on, because they help us to vet everything that we need to do. But we could have someone with a computer open, checking the Board of Ed email for questions during the meeting. And somebody could read the questions for people who are watching at home and live streaming. Because we're now restricting because of the Zoom bomb, and live streaming is different again than an interactive Zoom meeting like we had last night, where you can post questions and, you had a password protected. This, because it's a public meeting, it's not by invitation only, we can't run it that way. It has to just be an open public meeting that's live streamed, so we don't have the opportunity to post questions, because it's not necessarily safe. So,
Sure.
but we can bring a computer, and maybe Tina or I can certainly monitor the board email for questions.
Sure, and then if I understand correct, we're still gonna live stream. We're gonna meet.
Yes.
So this way, if we ever had an overflow meeting and we had to stop entrance, they'd go home and watch, just get there early, get a seat, and that's the way we're working, so that's fine.
Would the board want to offer, like some districts are, seats, like when we can determine what the maximum capacity, Jackie, if you could ask Jim to determine, because I think we already determined that.
I think he knows it already.
Because we have, the seats are going to be actually marked in the auditorium, like when you go to the doctor's office, they tell you where to sit now. So our seats will be marked, and we'll know what the maximum capacity is. I doubt we'll reach that.
Right.
But did you want to invite, give the PTAs a certain number of seats, the union a certain number of seats, and then the rest to the general public, or just the general public?
Sure, you could allocate a
Yeah, I
number of
think
seats
it's
for
probably a good
specific
idea
people.
to allocate some.
I think that any one of those organizations that service the schools should have the first dibs on the seats,
Sure.
how many they want. And then from there, everybody else.
Okay. All right, we'll work on that. And we'll plan on that. Again, the work session, we should probably move those to the auditorium anyway, because we would not be social, unless you want to continue to have them here. And we could have an audience here. But the conference room where we usually meet, which is in the high school conference room outside of the guidance office, is too small for all of us even to be socially distant. There's air conditioning, but there's no windows. Well, we don't have windows open.
Done what
This
you
all
want.
works out well, right?
Yeah, are we gonna continue to live stream this, and we're covered, correct? And people can fit, however many can fit in here.
The only thing I need to draw is that this is going to be used as a classroom. So we will be, but you see all the desks over there, because it was set up as a
Right.
classroom, so.
So they would set it this way, they just moved it that
That's
way, right?
moving the students.
Or we could move to the auditorium, and then we wouldn't have to disrupt
Then let's go to the auditorium.
Yeah, that's
All right, so we'll hold all of the meetings in the auditorium.
moving
Work
forward.
session, and you want to start this on the 8th? And hold the meeting on the 3rd,
Go to first, the third.
the 3rd?
Go to the third, right?
Sure.
And I'll walk there, and I'll walk to high school and we'll do it.
There's air conditioning in there, right?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, I probably will we'll post that meeting, obviously. I guess I can ask Mary to let people know, and we'll post something on the website about capacity. How would you like to monitor questions during the meeting?
Let's do with,
Pre-submitting is good.
yeah, I do, I like that, grab a computer, just check it. Use the board of that account.
who would you like to do that? Because I'll bring, you want to bring your own device? You want me to supply a device for you to log into the BOE email?
Yeah, we'll have a device from the school. Yeah, but yeah. So it's part of the setup for the meeting, and then we just have it open.
That, Don, you'll monitor that?
It's even myself and one of the board members.
Okay. The disclaimer. So the last time we met, we talked about posting something on our website. We had sent it to you to take a look at. And Dom had suggested a wording change, and so you should have a copy of it in your packet.
Yep.
It says draft statement for website.
Looks good.
Anybody have any comments or?
The only thing I could recommend is that, like, obviously on the Twitter account, some of them are very self-explanatory, but I would have no idea what the like ERSD wellness, I can guess at it. Guidance is obviously, but maybe just
Description.
who it is, you know, so
Great
that people
suggestion.
know what they're going to. Goey's Rockway, I have no idea. Is that the athletic one, Goey's Rockway? I didn't see
I think
I think that's,
it is.
that, right?
yeah,
I just guessed, but
yeah,
I think a description would be great, really help people.
And they'll be live, we can live link all of them.
Yeah, that's great, that's awesome. So I like it.
So we'll put it on the side in the news. There's 3 boxes when you're on the website. There's the photos that scroll. And then on the left, there are 3 boxes that have current news. We can put it in one of those boxes for now. It will drop off and go down when we have other important news, but we can say keep it up there for a month, or tell me how long you want it there. It'll always be on the website, but it may not be, we do use those for current information that
Sure.
we want to bring to people's attention. So we'll keep it there like a month,
Yeah,
and then it could drop down.
right, and we just keep reminding people,
Okay.
as the meetings go on, that's fine.
Would you like this sent out globally in the Connect Ed?
I think it'd be terrific.
That's a great idea.
I think that'd be it's a great idea. Everybody understands it, sees it.
I can do that the end of this week. And then say, it'll be posted for your further reference on the website.
Great.
So, we wanted to update you on the reentry plan. We can't wait to stop talking about it and actually do it. Teachers, like, today we had a meeting with teachers, and let's open already. They were really fun. I know a lot of people are anxious, but a lot of people do want to get back in, and because the planning is just, and talking about it, and the extra information that keeps coming our way, and the new requirements are just very stressful for everyone. But today we did have a meeting, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Hecht in a minute, where we wanted to speak with the teachers about what the requirements for the full remote option would be. We have about 185 students, which is a lot, who opted for a full remote model. We have had a number of parents who are kind of wanting to change their mind, and we are discouraging it. If someone has a real medical reason with medical documentation, we will still accept it. But we really have closed it off because we're trying to create schedules for our students and classrooms, and some parents have picked remote, and now they want to go back.
Yeah.
And again, the classroom numbers were based on the numbers we had at the time, and we did extend it twice now. And since we changed to a full everyday model for K3, we extended it. We said, well, we did change the model, so I had suggested we extend it a little bit again. We did, but I think, we're going to cut it off now unless someone has a medical documentation for themselves or someone in their family, or if it's a brand new entrant that came in and meets that criteria. So I think parents were very appreciative of us offering that. And parents have written me some of the most heart-wrenching emails just about their own angst over not being sure what to do and what's the right choice, and waffling back and forth. So we've tried to accommodate everybody. We think we're pretty stable now, and so we met with teachers to talk about what the expectations are. And tomorrow night at 5:00, we will we're going to talk about sending out the emails for meetings. We will send that out. We're not posting those because of the Zoom bomb that happened. We are sending out the meeting links about a half hour before the meeting, and then the password a few minutes, a little bit later after that. So it will be 2 separate emails, the link for the meeting and the password, and those are only invitation-only meetings. Obviously, when we have a board meeting, we're not going to invite people because we actually can't invite the parents to a board meeting. We would be addressing a certain segment of our population in the community, and we're not supposed to do that. But these meetings obviously are by invitation to the parents who belong there. So we did set up Connect Ed groups for just the remote parents, and tomorrow night that meeting is for the remote parents, so they will be invited. So we will send that out to you. It starts at 5. We'll send it out about 4 if you're interested in participating. Again, these are just for your FYI, if you like to sit in. But we will be presenting expectations for parents as well tomorrow night. So I'm going to let Mona talk a little bit about what that looked like this morning. And we had, I think, almost 80 teachers
Yeah, we have
on the meeting.
more than 70 teachers. It was a great turnout. We met for about an hour and a half. We presented a lot of information. They asked a lot of questions about the fully remote model, as well as some other things. Obviously, there are a lot of questions still out there. But now that we had our plan together, our K-3 students coming in daily, some classes, as you know, split within the building, but all students on site daily, and then hybrid for 4 through 6, and then 6-day cycle hybrid for 7 through 12. Now with these number of remote students, we have to make sure that they have access to all of that instruction. So we spoke at length with the teachers. It's very specifically by grade level what that would look like, but we expect that synchronous instruction is going to be available to the students, whether they're in the building in a separate location, whether they're on a hybrid model and on a remote day, or if they're a fully remote student and learning all the time from home. So the teachers will be using their Google Meet connected cameras and be able to ensure that students will have their schedule, whether it's a high school student, they'll have their daily schedule as if they were in the building. If they're an elementary student, they'll get their class assignment, their teacher assignment, their schedule for that class, and then they'll have access through Google Meet for those instructional sessions throughout the day. So, different from the spring, what we really worked very hard to do now is be very proactive so that families understand what the schedule looks like, what the time commitment is for the different subject areas, and be able to prepare in advance. So we're really committed to making sure that fully remote students have access to the learning. We know it's not going to be exactly the same as if they were in school. And we're going to be honest about that. There's no way to replicate it completely for a student who's at home full time. But we're going to do the best we can to ensure that they do have that access to the instruction, and that they're able to, if possible, participate with asking a question from home, participate in an activity, just as the students in school would be doing, and then, of course, being responsible for all of the learning and all of the activities and all of the coursework that's required. So, again, trying to replicate it as best we can. We do know that those students need support, so we are going to be, we've elicited from the teachers the hope that many of the classroom teachers themselves or other teachers in the department or grade level, or even teaching assistants will agree to be sort of a support manager for the students who are remote learners. So we'll assign, for example, an elementary student, either their classroom teacher if they're interested in doing so, or again, another faculty member to those students on that grade level who are learning remotely. And then we'll give them extra support during the week through 2 to 3 30-minute sessions where they can check in with those students, monitor their progress, give them feedback on their work, work closely with the classroom teacher if it's not their own classroom teacher, and really, and this, like everything else, is really a work in progress. We're going to be monitoring it. We're going to be talking to the teachers, talking to the families, finding out what's too much, what's not enough, and really assessing and modifying it as we go. But we want to make sure that those students not only have the access, but also have the support to have questions answered, get feedback on their work, and really, continue with their learning, even though they're not on site.
So just to interrupt for a second, Mona, we do have, as you know, a Twilight program. We have budget for that the last number of years. We run that program through BOCES. This year, because there were no regents exams, we had hardly any failures. And so generally, students who attend the Twilight, it's a credit recovery program for kids who have failed a course, who need to repeat a course, who maybe couldn't fit something in their schedule because they had failed in the past. So we do have money in that budget for that program. And so since we may be running it, depends, sometimes in January we start to see students need to catch up or for whatever reason, but we don't expect to we don't expect to run that program at its full capacity this year because there was no Regents exam. And so we will be dipping into some of those funds to pay teachers for these extra assignments, because we do recognize that it's an extra burden on the teachers to now run a remote. They're running their classroom, then they're running their remote, and then they're running the full remote. And so some of the teachers have already said they don't want to do it. They have enough on their plate. And so either the teaching assistant might do it or someone else in the department might do it. But we do feel, in the beginning at least, those kids need to have a personal connection who are on full remote. Parents may say, that's too much. My kids are sitting on the computer all day as it is. They don't want to sit for another 4 hours after school and be on a computer. But we're going to try it out for the first month, and then we'll monitor it very closely, monitor the attendance, get feedback from parents and kids and teachers as well. But the teachers, we did ask the union what they felt was fair in order to run this remote program, and how could we support teachers but also compensate them, because we were asking them for something, to do something over and above, and they thought our idea was great. And we asked everybody, we said, anybody else have another idea as to how to support these kids? And so we went with this model. It will cost us a little bit, but we're not paying supervisions. We pay teachers to we may be, athletics is going to happen. We will be paying some supervisions, but we will be paying coaches' salaries. Right now, our clubs are not operational, and so and we don't know what athletics is going to look like, because I understand middle school athletics won't be running yet. So, we think that teachers will take advantage of it because it is extra money, but we think in order for this model to work, we need to make sure the kids are connected and supported, at least in the beginning, and then we'll constantly evaluate how this goes. And then Mona's will be presenting tomorrow night to parents as well. And asking parents that, parents wanted this model, that we will be expecting their commitment as well to support their students, make sure their kids are participating, their attendance will be taken, they can't just not show up. It's, we will be looking into, it will be, a form of truancy if kids don't follow the schedule and report to the classes, because, attendance was not taken from March to June. And so it was a very different model than this will be.
Yes, Lisa, as possible as that the program rolls out, that we're able to get some kind of report back about the attendance, making sure that the kids are taking advantage of it, which we are spending money there. This way we know whether they keep it running or not, if it's worth it or not, but yes, we did. My other question was, do we give any consideration on, as we're programming extra periods, as I learned through in the parent meetings when I was listening, is that students who were behind, can they be filled in with classes that they're still lacking, that we can get credit on during the course of the school day?
In their current high school schedule, for
Yes.
example?
Mhm.
Well, guidance has scheduled students for all of their classes. I'm not sure I understand.
Just what, through the parent meetings,
Yeah.
what I was understood, and maybe I'm wrong, is that students will be scheduled for some extra classes because if there were gaps, we're trying to fill those gaps in.
Oh, rather than having study halls.
Correct,
Oh,
That was
I'm
instead
sorry,
of a
yes.
study
that's
hall.
correct.
Okay.
So has that been looked at for the students who are behind in credit, so that if it happens to be that study hall period, they can pick up a class?
They wouldn't get assigned a study hall. Those kids would not have been assigned a study hall. If there was a class that they needed to take, that's scheduled in by their counselor.
So a class from the past,
Yeah, guidance does that normally. And those kids don't, it's the kids who don't need any additional credits and don't wanna take an elective that get a study hall. But, you know, we don't want, the study hall is a little problematic, so we schedule kids for more electives.
Right.
But yeah, and that's a matter of course in guidance. And of course, when twilight is needed, it will, you know, will run.
Yeah, we've been fortunate the last few years since we've added the summer school program. Our students who needed those courses have enrolled in summer school for the most part, caught up then, and then been able to start the school year caught up, where in the past they would take some courses in twilight when we didn't have a summer school. So it's been a nice addition to add the summer school, and also then it's reduced our need for twilight. But as Lisa said, in the past school year, for example, we didn't have such a need in the fall because those students had taken summer school courses, caught up, but then by the middle of the year, there are students that we identified and we ran a few courses for the spring semester through twilight.
This was an item you submitted.
So fast.
Yeah. About coverage, drop off and pickup?
Yes, in the parent meetings, there was quite a bit of talk about, if a child was scheduled for a certain place at a certain time, okay, that, so if I had two children in the school and they were like 5 minutes apart or 10 minutes apart, one of the responses was that, the parent should drive out of the Oval and come back. And knowing the kind of congestion we have, is it possible that, the parent at that point in time, the child who is waiting, they wait with the other one. So if they know their brother or sister is getting out 5 minutes later, the parent should show up at the later one. So this way they're gonna pick them both up at the same time, not to go out and come back in.
Yeah, that's not
I
efficient.
see it as a total,
Talking about the high school?
we're talking about the high school particularly, and that's the question that was asked by a parent at that time. And, and then it was stated that we don't know if we have the personnel to be outside. And I said to myself, I thought that was odd. We have security, we have plenty of APs at the end of the school day that have always been outside. The principal's been outside, the AP's been outside, security's been outside. So I just wanted to make sure that we're okay with the fact is that parents shouldn't be driving in and out of the Oval. To get back in the Oval, it's taking another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the kids are gonna wait there anyway.
Especially if you try to catch a train.
I said,
Forget it.
exactly.
Absolutely.
So if we could make sure there's an adjustment somehow that the parent is not told, get out, come on back.
Yeah, okay. Well, in the morning, there'll be a holding place. Some kids will go to the gym and some will go.
But they couldn't, it's
At
it
the end.
wasn't pickup, it was the drop off.
Drop off
It
too.
was, you had those staggered times, and it was, the one kid could go in at the one time, but they didn't know if they would have the coverage of the personnel in the other two locations at the time that early kid was coming in. So maybe if they're all there and their own time, what is it, 7:45, the first group shows up, something around like that?
We will
That
accommodate
they're
it.
at least there, so if you do have those kids, they are able to go into and wait in those areas.
I know that the auditorium will be used for kind of holding pattern. The breakfast program will be open, and then the gym will be open for the older kids. So I don't think that'll be a problem.
That's a lot of room. That's a lot of room. That should be fun.
And the kids arrive at different times, so, in in general. And once extra help starts, we're going to hold off on extra help for the first month, just until there's so many variables, but when extra help starts, then that will also ease the staggered, having kids arrive in a staggered way. Cleaning schedule, Jackie,
Sure. So I just wanted to give you an update on where we
I
are.
have 21 minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna put where we are and what we're thinking. So in the high school, we currently have 2 full-time staff in the day. I have arranged to bring in 2 more people midday to assist, so that will be 4 staff, 2 full-time, 2 like 3.5 to 4 hours midday to assist with cleaning of the bathrooms, the banisters, the doorknobs and such. In the elementaries, each elementary building has 1 full-time staff. We've arranged to have some of our other staff members work there for 3 to 4 hours in the middle of the day, again, to do the cleaning of the student desks after they eat, the bathrooms and handrails, and we are also looking at potentially bringing in a substitute also to help in the elementary during the middle of the day, because we do feel there'll be a lot more need in the elementary buildings, because the students are eating in the classrooms, unlike the high school where they're eating in the cafeteria.
Right.
A lot easier to clean, 50, 60 desks at once in one room than it is to clean 12 desks in 12 different locations, so.
We're gonna use the mats though, right? The paper mats?
Yes, we will be using the paper mats, but we still need to wipe down the desks and empty the garbage. So,
Jack, would that be about 4 people also then? Because you were going through that pretty quick.
oh, I'm sorry, I was told I had 21 minutes. I follow the rules.
We're gonna have all 21 minutes.
So,
Just the
staff.
in elementaries, we have 1 full-time staff. I have a part-time in there, utilizing our grounds guys. And I'm hoping to bring in another substitute in the middle. So
We
that
can
would
put
be
it in the
great.
update.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be
I'll
great,
put it in.
Yeah,
Sure.
we can put a schedule in the,
Yep.
once the schedule's all developed, we
Yeah.
put it in the update.
And we will be I'll be working with the head custodians, and I have meetings set up with each of the principals on Monday morning to discuss, what our plans are and how we're gonna roll them out, so. Absolutely.
Any other questions about our plan or any other aspect of schools reopening?
Actually, my only question would be that when we review the policies in a while, that those policies that we review, that really would be reflective of the reentry plan, such as the computers, right? And also the conduct, code of conduct ones, that somehow formally will get them out to the parents. Because normally when we do policies, we don't send them out to parents and say, these policies have just been updated. So my reason for saying that is because these 2 are really crucial in the fact of parents understanding and students understanding what they're up against in the event that things don't go right for them and they're not doing the right thing. And I think it would be a really good idea if somehow we get them out there.
Well, both of these policies that you mentioned go out, and they are signed, the parents have to sign off on the code of conduct. And then
Code of
the
conduct.
acceptable use policy, the exhibits is what the parents sign. So they get the policy and they get the exhibit, which is attached to it, and they have to sign that. The child has to sign it, and we get them back. So both of those always go out. So that's why we wanted to get them ready for the beginning of school. There are a number of new policies that NISBA has in their policy update that we planned on meeting this week, but we have to postpone it. So hopefully we'll get those done sometime. We will probably put them up on the agenda for review because they're the next group of policies that NISBA sent us. So with your permission, I'll put them under the review section on our agenda for actually next week's meeting, just so that they're sitting there. That means we work on them and then we can adopt them in October. According to our policy schedule, we have to keep them up for review for a month, and then we will meet before then to look at these specific policies related to COVID that school boards have recommended.
Lisa, did you want me to take off of review, the opioid overdose non-platinization of federal funds? Or are we keeping those on review?
Oh, they can stay for review,
Okay.
yeah, because we're not ready to adopt them.
Okay.
So they can sit there, yep. So today we had, just very quickly, we had a meeting with the Living with the Bay team, and It went fairly well. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss the permitting that they are requiring us to sign. One of them is needed Dom's signature and my signature as well. We had the scope of the proposed work form, the smart growth form. We had permits for the whole project, which was the bulkhead, the generator, and the parking lot. And these are standard forms that our environmental consultant was on the call with us. John Grillo was not able to attend with us, but they asked for some additional paperwork from us, which we will be able to provide to them. They were, very pleased that we'll be able to turn these permits around for them so quickly. They said they're encountering still a little bit of delay with regard to the Army Corps of Engineers. If you remember, the Army Corps wanted us to reposition the bulkhead, and we are opposing that, and we pushed them to, provide an explanation as to why that would not work. They're still waiting to hear back from the Army Corps of Engineer. So it's interesting because we wait a long time for things to happen, and then we get a little pressure from them while we're waiting. But we want to comply because we need this to stay on schedule. So right now, they're a little bit behind. They're about a month behind because they were expecting to start in September. They will not probably now be starting till November. And that is keeping fingers crossed that the Army Corps responds back and approves that permit. So we're hoping that they have that November start date because John Grillo needs a March start date in order to start working on the field. And so if they don't start by November, it's going to delay the field project. So we will hopefully write them a letter stating such. I will also be contacting Senator Kaminsky, who was very helpful the last time we had a delay in kind of giving them a nudge.
I know there was some resistance from people on the other side of the river. Is that?
Well, that could happen when they have the comment period. And that's something we won't have any control over, but, so that's the plan where we stand now. Their plan is to start the bulkhead in November, turn it over to the district by March 1st for the field to start. They're still planning on installing the generator in the spring and the parking lot in the summer and complete everything by the summer of 2021. And again, they're still waiting for the HUD, Army Corps of Engineer, and SED permitting approvals. But we will provide everything that they need by tomorrow or the next day and hopefully get a guarantee. Our environmental consultant was a little concerned that what will happen if they're late, but I don't see that we are going to have control over that. We can do everything we can to push them, but it will be what it'll be. And we just hope, we'll keep our fingers crossed that it's finished by March 1st. So that's where we stand with living today. Any questions on that?
No.
Policy matters? Turn over.
I think we saw most of it in your update. We have the computer use and instruction. And for that one, we were just looking at.
There was one typo in the exhibit. I believe Mary corrected it. Sorry, Kristen.
These are the ones we went over.
Yeah,
The
right.
last meeting.
So I think we were listening to our from remote learning. Mr. Rouse joined us and used some wording that you had up on the website, correct? That's what we added.
It was also in the parent letter that we sent out in the spring about etiquette.
Yeah,
Etiquette.
I like that word.
Connecticut, that's a,
So, that language, Mr. Schaefer and his team reviewed so that it was flexible enough to address any of the issues that are in the acceptable use policy, which, covers it in and of itself. We can obviously take disciplinary action if students are not complying with the acceptable use policy. We hope not to, because now the computers, the devices are essential. It's an essential piece of instructional equipment. But we will be reminding students and enforcing that, and then the code of conduct reflects what it needs to in order to be general enough that it can address those online behaviors.
The spelling bees was public, right?
Yes. Yes. COE, right?
Yeah. I thought the policy was good. I think it's real good because it has teeth in it. You know, especially during this time that we're so remote and using computers every day, so it would be good.
Thank you, Kristen and Pete. I think we had a really productive session. And then the student health services, that just was reflecting removing the language for religious exemptions, which are no longer allowed for immunizations. So we have to remove that language allowing that. And then the field trips and excursions. Kristen, you had the best notes on that.
Yeah, so we apparently were in a good spot to adopt this in March, and then with the pandemic, we kind of just did it, we never wound up going back to it. I think we were on our final update, and we were just looking for the board to be able to review the final language. And we reviewed this multiple times as a board.
It feels like we've been doing it for like a
It's
year.
the policy that
Right?
does not
It's the policy that never ends.
forever.
So we just wanted to make sure that we had made those final changes. I think what were we reflecting on those changes? The only thing that we were looking at that we didn't have this, and I meant to ask you, and I think Tom, you brought it up as well, the supplementals, the request for
Exhibits.
educational field trip, the parent approval, the fundraising plan, those are just being developed in the building, correct?
Yes.
And we'll be able to see those before they're complete.
Yes, actually, I have to get back to Richard on that. I think Jackie, you were working, he was going to meet with you to submit for your approval any fundraising.
Right, he was gonna develop the form
Mhm.
to submit to them.
No, I think this is funny that we're adopting this now, and
Now,
field
yeah.
trips are not in
Yeah.
here.
Well, we're not- we're
I'll go out on a
not
limb and say we probably won't have too many field trips.
We're not adopting it tonight.
We're not, okay.
Tonight, yeah, no. For, the only two that are for adoption are computer use and student health services. The code of conduct has to have a public hearing before we can adopt it, so it has to be up for 30 days. So that public hearing, we actually can hold it on the 15th, or we can hold it on the 3rd, September 3rd, and then get it adopted on the 15th. So we just announced that it's a public hearing at the beginning of the meeting. Does anybody have any questions on the code of conduct? Nobody usually does. And then you adopted the meeting at the subsequent meeting. Do you want to add the public hearing to the 3rd, or?
I think that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We want to get it adopted.
Okay.
Sooner rather than later. Okay, so field trips and excursions is not adoption tonight. We're
No.
doing that in review. Okay.
Yeah, so if the board wants to look at it, and then we can discuss it at the September 8th. I'll
I
put it
know
on.
that we were waiting for that one. It was a financial, fundraising. Right.
Did you want me to say anything about the code of conduct, like what you had written in the update? Do you want me to state that?
When you give your policy, so sure, that would be great.
Okay, so we'll be holding.
And the same-
hearing. Are we doing it preceding the September 15th, or we're going to do September 3rd? Preceding the work session or after the work session?
I think we should do proceeding, no? How do you guys feel?
We do it at the beginning of the September 3rd meeting,
So preceding the
September 3rd special meeting. His ears just perked up. September 3rd special meeting.
doable this time,
Yeah, so up for adoption are just those two, the health and the computer use and instruction.
So we're going to then adopt it of the September 15th.
Code of conduct, yes. following any questions anyone may have at the public hearing.
Okay. Dennis conference then?
Yeah, so I shared a draft schedule of our 3 superintendent's conference days. I know in the past we've talked about the topics that we are going to address. And we have a very, I think, rich and robust plan for those 3 days. We tried to really manage all of the needs and at the same time make it manageable because there's a lot that we need to go over the first day. Well, each of our faculty and staff members will be reporting to their buildings so that we can keep everybody in their locations, but also a little bit distance, and we'll be engaging in remote learning for all of the sessions. So they will be able to log in and follow along with everything. The first day is really the welcome back with everybody, so all faculty and staff will participate. And we've kind of unrolled it with the beginning being the priorities and then the different needs by faculty and staff. So for example, we know we're leading with health and safety, so that will be the priority in the beginning, the first morning, ensuring that everybody is comfortable coming back, understands the protocols, doesn't have any questions about what's expected for students, for faculty and staff, and also knows what has been done to prepare. And we'll go over the employee health screening app that we'll be including in the expectations. We'll talk about school safety with our representative from Mount Harris and address the new lockdown drills and fire drills because there's some changes there. And then we have Dr. Foyer from Northwell Health, our partnership with them, who will address trauma-informed instruction. So that will be for everybody. The afternoon that day, we'll start to roll out some individual needs, but the faculty meetings that happen each year will happen that afternoon. Our building principals will address their faculty and staff, and there'll be time for teachers to get into their classrooms and do some final setup before the school year begins. The next 2 days are much more specialized. The second day, we have a special education update by our PPS director and assistant director and Title IX updates, and that's for, again, everybody. We start the day with everybody connected, and then the different groups, as you can see on the schedule, will break out for specific things that relate to their grade levels. We want to make sure that teachers have time to go over some of the curriculum writing projects that were done this summer, particularly for our math curriculum at the elementary level. They worked on identifying some of the gaps from last spring, so teachers have in their hands activities and lessons to start the school year to fill in some of those gaps in learning that might have occurred. Of course, technology support. We want to make sure everybody's comfortable with synchronous instruction before the school year begins because we, as we just mentioned, are going to be expecting all students who are hybrid and or remote or distanced in school to access learning through synchronous instruction, remote learning, and then time for faculties to have department meetings and work together. Then the third day, we have some other individualized training, and we have some opportunities for our elementary teachers to work on Wonders, which is our new reading program. You'll hear more about that later in the year. And our social workers will be addressing all faculty in smaller groups on social and emotional learning so that when the students come back, the teachers really know how to engage and develop those relationships in the beginning, because again, this year is going to look very different than any other year. So that's our schedule. There's a lot there. We'll be talking more about it as we go through it. If you have any questions, I can answer those. Yeah.
Do you want anybody from the board representing on September the 2nd?
Yes,
The first,
yes, usually we do have the president speak or vice president or both, addressing all the faculty. Again, we will be in the auditorium,
Mhm.
so you can come there and then speak, and it will be, we'll get to you. Mr. Rouse will figure out how we're gonna do that. He's doing it through Zoom, who's ever at the podium.
Mhm.
So we begin, we'll add you in board remarks. I'm going to curtail mine for the morning. I want to thank Mrs. Heck because this is a Herculean task and she worked with obviously all of the administrators and identifying the areas throughout the summer and the different committees. This is part of the communication protocol and the training that was recommended by all of our 8 committees. So that's really included there. She also met with the Professional Development Committee and then had a final meeting with the URTA this morning to get a stamp of approval on the 3 days of workshops. So I think, it's never enough time, but I think it covers a lot of information, but also allows teachers time to work on things that they need to in their classrooms and get comfortable with trying out the technology.
Thank you.
And any questions on that? The protocol for
Sharon Mix. So it seems that I had said the other day, I was texting out Lisa, I was texting out Kristen to get the link for the last meeting yesterday, because if you guys get them, if your parents, I don't get any, because we changed the system, and we had to change the system. So I'm just thinking if we get both at the same time, the day of the meeting, it'll be a lot easier, because I've been getting so many emails every day and going through things every day that once it gets put back in the stack, it's back in the stack, and then you gotta dig through it and find it and all that stuff. So is it possible then, for whenever we have a virtual meeting, to have it delivered that day, that morning, and it serves as a reminder, number one, and number two, it's right there that day, so it's ready to go. I just thought it would be a lot easier if we did it that way.
Absolutely. Luckily, it sounds like you texted me, because I completely forgot.
Right.
As a parent and as a board member, that was yesterday, I was sitting at a Connor's baseball game, and I was like, oh boy. So I pushed myself all the way back and kept it on.
no problem, we'll make sure that goes out. And then we had discussed putting this as a standing agenda item to talk about next month's agenda, the work session. So far I have the field trip policy. I'd like to put on that agenda our curriculum presentations for the year and find out what the board, what we've come up with so far and what the board would be interested in learning more about. We always ask you for what would you like to see and learn more about at these public presentations. And then Mr. Healy, in the spring, the board had asked if we could get an update and a review of all of our special education programs and statistics. So Mr. Healy will be providing that presentation on September 8th. That still works for everyone. Okay. If you have other agenda, I know there were a few that were left over.
So if you got the agenda items that you suggested, we can get them on there now, right?
So, the school rating, like, I have a quick story, and I know we have to go, but my wife's, one of our best friends lives in Franklin Square. So they're looking to buy a house. So of course, they say, East Rockaway, great neighborhood, they come close to us. They refuse to move here because of our school rating. So we're at a 5, and Franklin Square is at a 9. So again, I don't know much about it, so I reached out to Tom and said, what does this school rating mean, and how do we fix that, if anything? So Limerick's a 7, so I started doing some research. We're lower for the area. I just don't know how or what goes into that and how we fix it. But that was, again, and they ended up buying a house in Franklin Square, but even Oceanside was at 9, which I thought was high. But again, I don't know what goes into that. Is it enrollment, and do we suffer because of our enrollment and the programs we have and the kids we bring in? I don't know, but something to look at. Now.
Can you send me that, because I'm not familiar with those numbers.
Yeah, so it's,
yeah. It's not state designation.
yeah, so like if you look, yes, I can send it to you. I'll send you the link. But yeah, you can actually, it's on when you're looking for a house, like any of those websites, Zillow, MSLI, but it's also, there's actually a website that shows them all.
Right.
So, yeah, we looked into it a little bit, because when she called, I'm like, and she's like making fun of me, Mr. Board of Education, you don't even know that? I'm like, I want 2 months.
It's not a real rating normally.
I know, I tried to explain it. Listen, I went through the whole spiel, I gave her a whole spiel. Like, it's a free private school, basically, we're so small, we have, teach his own. But that was something that just something to look into.
Absolutely. If you can send me
Piggybacking,
the information, we'll look into it.
sure, piggybacking on what Joe said, there's also the Blue Ribbon School District. So every parent, for some reason, loves to brag about that. I'm not 100% sure of what it is, what it means. For some reason, every parent thinks that it raises property values, and it piggybacks on what he said. Is that a impossible process to undertake? And is that something that we would even want to go after?
So, when I saw it, from Dom, Mona and I were speaking, Mona's gonna do a little research on it. I will tell you right now what I am familiar with.
Mhm.
It's an incredibly extensive process.
I've heard.
Yeah.
And I would not recommend, that we look into it this year because of COVID.
Again,
But we
this is
certainly
tough.
can look into what is required and, maybe make a plan for, seeing if we would meet some of the criteria. I will say that a major factor was, I haven't looked into it recently, were state test scores. And because of our very high opt-out rate, that we've had over the past, number of years, we've only had 65% participation in our state tests because we have many families who've opted out over the last number of years. Now the opt-outs have been decreasing, but of course, we didn't have state tests this past year, so I don't even know what Blue Ribbon School, what criteria they would use, because there are no assessments, but assessments are a very big part of the Blue Ribbon process. But we will look into it and we'll bring it back and share it with you. And then if the board would like us to develop a plan to consider that for the following year, we can absolutely do that.
Lisa, if it takes 2 years to accomplish that goal, I think it's gonna not only raise your school rating, but it's gonna raise the overall perception in the district in a very, very big way. So it could be worth its weight in gold. I'm sure it's a ridiculous undertaking. Maybe we put together a committee or two.
That's usually what
To help
districts
us
do,
and-
is
and-
buildings, they do it by building. Building will put
Right, I know
together.
Center Avenue was a
Center
blue
Avenue
ribbon,
had
right?
it several years ago, in 2006 or 8, I think.
So it's only good
It
for
was-
1 year?
It was a big bona fide.
No. The number of years, I'm not certain how many years it is. And by the way,
But it's something that stays with you as a badge of honor, so to speak. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I know parents love that, so it might be something. What were you
Creates some
saying, Tom? I'm sorry.
competition within the district, when one school is and one school.
I think it's, it could be great. What were you saying? I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's not the only one either. There are others out there, certifications, that type of thing. So whatever, I think it's a great point. I think that prestige is a big thing. I think competition is always good because it makes people realize that we have standards and we're looking for those standards. So whatever kind of research you can do on those, Mona, would be great. It doesn't have to be only the Blue Ribbon. It might be something else that's prestigious enough that we can attain. I think that's the biggest thing, but I love the idea because I think that gives a combated approach to, the rating that's given by whatever that agency
Right.
is that's given the rating,
I definitely want to look into how that,
It is a great
that
idea.
rating.
Right, again, that's why I had no clue.
It's on greatschools.org.
Something like that,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, I ended up finding one, I'll send the link out.
And they work with the realtors and everything.
Right,
That's
I
right.
gave every school district, and I just looked a couple around the area to see.
Yeah, we did have a Realtors breakfast scheduled for, last year. It was the week before we closed. We closed on the 13th. I think it was scheduled for the 12th. And we had all Realtors coming. We had done it a few years ago. It was a huge success. We had people who were so impressed by
Sounds like a
what
great
this
idea.
little district does. Yeah, we had Realtors come from all over. We had students performing. We had all of our administrators spoke. We had an art show, a breakfast. It was really lovely, and unfortunately, we canceled it
And
because
it
it was.
changed the realtors' perception.
Right, if you don't know about a driveway, you don't know anything about a driveway, you just go by numbers, and you go by, amount of money the house is, and look at the school district, it's a 5. Well, why would we pay that when we can go here and it's a 9?
Right.
But if you know this area and you come from here, you obviously know that the value of our school district. So, I tried, unfortunately, it didn't work. So,
Well, a few years ago, we were designated as a College Board AP Honors School, so you can counter with that.
We were a school of
That's what I needed.
opportunity.
That would've been
We were also designated as a silver school of opportunity.
So maybe we
by,
promoted that a little bit along the way
Yeah.
while we're pursuing these other potential opportunities.
Oh,
Why can't we hang those on?
Yeah, that should be all over the place.
Prominent, so
We
that-
did, I mean, we did, it's kind of old now, it was 2013, so I think syntax, I think
Okay.
they usually tell you that sometimes it's better to not have it than have something that's old, that
Oh, really?
you've not been able to renew in terms of perception.
So that's the difference with the Blue Ribbon School District, because, you might have different insight because you're educators, administrators, so on and so forth. To a parent who doesn't know enough, just hears that Blue Ribbon School District and ding, 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 it's like the jackpot goes off. So that would be something worth keeping up on the site, even if it's 20 years, 10 years old or something like that. I don't know, that's just the way,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
we
the
did
perception of it.
promote the Schools of Opportunity and the AP Scholar for quite a while. It was in the strategic planning presentations and, because we were very proud of that.
You should be, as a district, that's wonderful. More of that is basically, I think, the
What if
gist
we
of it.
could grab something like that, you know? It's just like when the band goes out of state, you know, when they could, and went into a competition. It could have been the smallest competition anyway, but they come back with a trophy from
Come
the
back with a win,
competition,
right.
and, you know, it's held your head on something, so it's.
So I still tell people I was all conference center.
Actually, I hear it at least once or twice a week.
And I got listed on the algebra regions. So
There you go.
you don't wanna know how old I am, so.
The last thing, that's because we're moving on, we gotta get our meeting started, but the last thing is that, Lisa and I also spoke about the agenda items and when they're submitted, because what had happened this past week, you know, Mary gives me an email saying she looked for items, I had some of those items, and they just weren't, the time-wise, and that's how, when I got back to you all, I said, you know what, Lisa's got a lot on the plate, let's do the agenda, that's what she needs to be on the agenda tonight, which we did. So I thank everybody for, you know, understanding that. So now we have, that I see in front of me, which is great, okay, so the pre-work session meetings, okay, so all the agenda items and when they would be due. These are now, when the meetings are, Lisa?
Yes, the meet time that you, Kristen, and I would meet prior to the Thursday prior to the work session.
Okay,
So whatever time of day will work for you, we left the time open. But if people could get you those agenda items by that morning or the night before, then, and I can send this schedule out.
I was just gonna say, either I'll send it out to everybody, you can send it out to everybody,
Send it
this way everybody has this. And just, you know, note, you know, because things come up as we're, you know, walking around the neighborhood, so on and so forth. This way you can say, okay, let me get this in, this way it's in there, and we get it on the agenda.
I mean, we can set up a shared Google Doc where people could just put their items in and then.
That's a great idea.
Better idea.
That's a very functional,
That's a terrific
efficient
idea
idea.
on these dates, that'd be great. Yep.
And we'll send out a reminder that here's the document for this work session and you can just put in your items.
That's a
And
great
we would
idea.
just access that document through the email.
Yeah, there'll be a link, you click on it, and then we can discuss the agenda, because sometimes, you know, when so many items are coming from so many places, we may not have enough time to cover everything in that particular
Sure.
meeting, so I would want the board to kind of evaluate which are the most important.
Right.
And which could wait.
And that'd be the reason why, that Kristen and myself would, you know, meet with Lisa, either by phone, virtual, whatever, just to make sure we get everything covered we need for that particular work session, okay? Everybody has equal opportunity. Good, thank you. Okay, that was an ambitious agenda. I want to thank you, Lisa, Jackie, and also Mona for, you know, keeping us updated on everything's going on. So let's now get ready to move. Yeah.
Good call.
Uh-oh, that's embarrassing.
Lee, you know what you gotta do?